So back a couple episodes of Failure Frame, I had a few different people ask me my opinion on who's the worst goddess, the one from Tsukimichi or clearly the one from Failure Frame. And at the time I said still Tsukimichi was worse, just given how Makoto in that show was treated. But the more I'm seeing of this goddess, especially after episode 5, the more I'm starting to think she actually might be one of the most toxic goddesses in Isekai. I don't think you can actually pick a singular goddess who is the absolute worst, just because, unlike a concept of like, who's the strongest anime character, it's easier to give a example when you watch something like My Instant Death Ability and you have a character who's literally the embodiment of everyone in any universe's end. It gets a little easier to answer that question. But if you were actually to make a top list, this one's already quickly become one of the worst. Now, at face value, she's not doing anything all that bad or all that different than a lot of these, like, hey, I summon you, now I'm gonna treat you like shit, or I'm gonna toss you aside. And hell, even if she thought she wasn't giving our boy anything special, that magical bag she gave was better than a lot of characters end up getting. But the specific example that really is making me turn my head and say, wait a second, most of the goddesses that are like evil or witchy generally are just bitter. They're very feisty and they're very like almost verbally and if not physically abusive. But I think what makes this one a lot different is the way that she plays to emotion, not just from anger and pissed off rage, but the way she almost like gaslights people. That conversation she had with this girl in this episode and the way she almost like gets under her skin, not in the way that she makes her feel like, oh, if you don't do this, I'm gonna make your life hell. It's almost that soft emotional manipulation and quite literally verbal abuse of making her feel so pathetic and weak that if you don't do this, it's going to be so hard for her. And it's like the fact that she can be what she was to our MC and treat you like vermin and filth. We have, not last week, maybe episode 3, it was 3 or 4. And we had that kind of after the girl woke up and she's like, oh shit, what happened? The way she physically was like handshaking and like doing that dominance of physical authority, like I'm stronger than you, make sure you play by our rules. Or in this episode, you have that like, oh, if you don't do this, you know, this is really gonna it's just like she's so toxic in the way that she can verbally and physically beat you down as seen by our MC. She can dominate you as seen by the, listen, you have to thank me for everything I do and make sure you understand that I'm the head bitch in charge. Or that softer toxic manipulation that she did in this episode. She is peak toxic. There's no other way to put it. If this keeps up, now we're not going to see it by the end of this 12 episode season, but if Failure Frame was to actually really play into this goddess the way they've already teased over the beginning of this show, she could legitimately be one of the most evil representations of someone of power summoning people to a world and being absolute shit to them. And honestly, wasn't expecting to say that, but this woman actually, she infuriates me, and it's even more infuriating that that they gave her such a beautiful character design, because it's like, god damn it, she's gonna ruin so many people's lives. The I can fix her crowd are even questioning can they fix her at this point. I do a full live reactions though over on Patreon. If you want to see my full and thought to any of these Failure Frame episodes, it's going to be over there exclusively. Now, I don't want to seem like a broken record because I've already brought it up a couple of times over these videos, but the more I see of it, the more I am questioning, because as I say, this is simultaneously sometimes one of the best produced and worst produced shows all in one. When you look at the dragon fight, like when that dragon rider was attacking our girl who now we're trying to recruit, and I think we've officially recruited her up to this point, it's hard to say. She seemingly is quite impressed by our bag of blue gems from blue-eyed dragons. Basically, it switches between 3D and 2D quite a bit, but it does it pretty seamlessly. The only time the 3D is actually distracting is when it's just like the most casual standing around scene. Now, there is a lot of discussion on why they do it, and I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of what I've said in previous videos. I personally think it is just because of production issues, and the reason why some of these scenes are just done like that is because once you already have a character model made in whatever 3D program they're using, they can literally just place it back into any, like, they're not even trying to blend it, right? Completely hand-drawn background, dropping 3D character model, and they're just kind of like doing very basic moves. Like, it looks like someone did it in less than 10 minutes in like Maya or something. And I honestly assume what's happening is there's a lot of placeholder scenes that throughout the production pipeline that rather than dedicating someone to just hand draw a scene with very basic movements, they just are literally dropping in 3D character models to fill in those things, because it's not done so to get across a certain movement that's harder. Like, half the time, the stuff I see in 2D in this show, I'm like, I'm surprised that's not 3D. And then when I actually do see fights in 3D, most of the time, I'd say like 75% of the time, when characters are attacking or doing things in their 3D movements, or they switch between, okay, here's this dramatic close-up 2D shot, now we switch to 3D, it really doesn't look jarring. And I think if you remove those awkward, why are they standing around scenes in 3D, most people probably wouldn't have an issue with the way Failure Frame looks. And it's really weird, but the only thing that actually makes sense to me is there's just a lot of scenes that rather than taking the hour that it might take to do a simple character standing around talking, they just keep dropping in the already pre-made character model. It makes the most sense. But it was another slower pace episode, but it did have some kind of fun, unexpected moments. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about our main character's abilities, not because they're forgettable, but because like the way she was building up, like, hey, here's this ability, please keep it on the down low, I can enhance myself, I can't really promise to protect you. I'm like, okay, you know, obviously we don't need to protect our boy, but I was pretty excited to see what she does. And freeze, poison, opening plays and the thing's already dead. And the casual like, hey, we should probably have a talk later. It's like, yeah, you probably should. The show isn't groundbreaking. I really don't think it is. But it still scratches an itch. But I will be honest. The first couple of episodes did have my excitement more than probably 3 through 5 have had. But I am still very much invested in this show because I like the idea of the MC. I like the idea of how he determines to kill, mostly in self-defense. Or just like the idea of like when he does it, even if he's not mourning, he doesn't feel like a psychopath. You're adding in the kind of plot line with our newfound bodyguard here who is kind of getting exposed for who she is. She's trying to separate because obviously if you travel with her, the black dragons and the like are going to be constantly hunting you. There's some interesting stuff going on here. You have all the stuff going on with the goddesses and the class and the manipulation going on there. And honestly, while this isn't a groundbreaking show, it is one that I legitimately want to see more of. If every scene, or a majority of scenes, were that wonky 3D movements of just them standing around for no apparent reason, it would be very bad. Right now it feels like 2/3 of the general scenes are hand-drawn and they look fine, if not quite good. And then they just like, it's like, good scene, why the hell are they 3D? Good scene, really good fight scene, why the hell are they 3D? It's like, it's a weird production decision. It doesn't feel artistic, it doesn't feel creative, it just feels like they're filling in blank spaces that they didn't have time to properly animate. And I completely understand why people criticize it or even meme it saying it's failure frame the animation. I get it. Doesn't ruin it for me, mainly because the actual fight scenes and stuff and the general look of the characters are remaining fairly consistent. Not perfect, but fairly consistent, all things considered. And honestly, I thought the big reason why a lot of the 3D and the fight scenes were blending in well was because they were mostly in dim scenes, but we were in a pretty bright woods environment and it looked rather good for the fight scenes. So I don't know, it's weird that the worst part of the production is the general standing scenes rather than the 3D fighting, which is normally what you'd criticize, but I digress. Of course, let me know your feelings down below. What are you thinking of that goddess? Because I definitely think she is toxic, but thoughts down below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, and of course ring that bell. Like I mentioned, got those full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Evil Twin 01, Gabriel Nobraga, Ben Hennick, Shelby Logson, Fried Rice, and Prisoner 5580. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.